Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about something that happens on dates more often than we'd like to admit. I've been there, you've been there, we've all been there. And that is getting that feeling of being disrespected, even if it is just very subtle. Usually, it's not in an obvious or dramatic way, it's not someone being openly rude or openly hostile towards us, but it is that small feeling that simmers, below the surface where something is wrong. This doesn't add up. And talking about adding up, all those small moments, they do add up. She shows up late without acknowledging it. She cancels last minute and assumes you'll be fine with it. She talks over you, makes jokes at your expense, or keeps you in a very vague gray area where nothing clearly is moving forward. And when the date is over, you're left with a strange feeling that something was off, even though you can't really pinpoint to one clear incident. You don't really know why, what happened. Now, what is important is to understand that disrespect on dates rarely starts big. It usually starts very small and it just grows when it isn't addressed. And that is the key thing here. You have to address it. Most of the time, it's not malicious, it's, testing really. Even though if the testing isn't being done consciously, sometimes women just test you unconsciously. They just do without being, malicious or trying to, make you feel uncomfortable. And women naturally test where boundaries are. Generally speaking, all people will test where the boundaries are, especially early on. They want to know who they're dealing with. And they will adjust their behavior based on what they experience, based on what you tolerate, based on how you react. And a lot of men respond to this by trying harder. They become more accommodating, more agreeable, more flexible, and thinking this will smooth things out, but it won't, especially in dating. Over accommodating almost always backfires. When you constantly adapt yourself to someone else, you unintentionally signal that your time, your preferences, and your boundaries are secondary, and therefore they don't matter as much. So, I'm not saying that you shouldn't accommodate, you should be flexible, but there is a difference between being flexible and, just letting someone walk all over you. One of the most common ways this shows up is through over explaining, for instance. Instead of simply stating what you want or what you can do, you feel the need to justify that thing. You explain why you chose a certain restaurant, for instance, or a bar, why you can only stay for a certain amount of time. You're explaining why you have to go. Or, you explain why you texted when you texted and why you texted the thing that you said. These explanations, for instance, aren't necessary, and on a date, they don't come across as thoughtful. They come across as very uncertain, very insecure. And uncertainty and insecurity, that's where it goes wrong. That invites testing. That just signals, let's find out how far we can go. Another issue is laughing things off that actually bother you. A comment that crosses a line. I mean, you feel it in the moment, but you choose to ignore it because, you don't want to kill the vibe. You don't want to make things awkward. But the problem is that the vibe is already affected. You're just carrying the discomfort quietly. And, when you laugh it off, you communicate that this behavior is acceptable. And trust me, it's likely going to happen again. So disrespect also grows when there are no consequences. If someone cancels on you more than once and you continue to rearrange your schedule without addressing it, nothing changes. If she gives inconsistent communication and you respond by chasing harder, the imbalance becomes the norm. And, people generally will take their cues from your actions far more than from your words. What you say has to match your actions, and your actions is the thing that people, and of course women as well, will respond to. So, how do you stop this without becoming cold, defensive, aggressive? Generally speaking, how do you do this without being an asshole? Now, the first step would be to slow things down. You don't have to rush in to explain yourself. You don't need to rush to smooth things over, and you definitely don't need to rush in to win approval of her. You have to stay calm, and you should give a calm and measured response, and that will create a sense of steadiness. And steadiness is far more attractive than overeagerness. You got to be calm and collected, you got to be solid as a rock. And the second step is addressing things clearly and simply without, you know, much emotion or accusations. And you want to address things the moment they happen. You got to nip it in the bud. This doesn't require a confrontation or a long conversation, not at all. Just a calm statement like, that doesn't work for me, or I don't really like jokes like that. You know, that's often more than enough. The key is saying it once and then paying attention to what happens next. If she, you know, if she changes or adjusts her behavior, that's a good sign. It shows awareness and respect. You know, if it doesn't, then you don't argue, you don't try to persuade her, and you don't, try to persuade her to treat you better. You adjust your investment. That's all you need to do. So you text less. You stop rearranging your schedule. You do things like, deciding maybe not to continue seeing her. That is obviously the last resort. If you've made it clear, like, here's the boundary, I don't like this, and she doesn't change, you pull back, you pull away, you see what happens. And if nothing changes, then the best advice would be to just say, well, it stops here for me. I'll go find someone else. So, this is especially important to remember. Respect on dates is not built through effort or persistence. It is built through you, through self trust. And when your words and your actions align, women feel that and they will respond accordingly. And the women who don't respond to that clarity were never going to respect you in the first place. Dating isn't about tolerating behavior until, some woman chooses you. It's about choosing situations that feel mutual, they feel balanced, and, they should feel good to be in those situations. If you consistently leave dates feeling smaller and confused or dismissed, even, that's not chemistry or mystery. That's information, and that's information telling you to move on and look for someone else. And you need to listen to those cues. You need to listen to that information. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.